My stoic boyfriend just cried in front of me for the first time in 3 years and it made me feel very weird. Is this normal? I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years now. He's never been comfortable talking about his emotions. The only person he's ever confided in was his mother when he was a child. Some people refer to him as a robot. Obviously in the past I'd expressed my desire for him to talk to me about things that are affecting him, but he just fobs it off. We've fought about it in the past and he has said he just cannot get the words out. Earlier this week his family found out that his mother will be passing very soon. As in potentially a couple of weeks even. It came as a surprise to all of them. I wanted to find a way to get him to open up to me, and wanted to do it not with words, so I thought I could wash his hair and make him feel comfortable enough to open up that way. Well, yesterday when he eventually came home from work he looked rough as anything. I'd already made dinner so we sat down to eat it, but we pretty much ate in silence. He rarely even looked up from his food. I asked if he wanted to talk and again he fobbed me off. Once we'd finished I asked him if he'd like to shower with me. It would have been a couple days at least since he'd have been able to have one. I dimmed the bathroom lights and put some relaxing music we both enjoy on the speaker. Got the shower nice and hot, gently helped him unclothe and had him sit on the bench thing under the water while I finished unclothing. I joined him on the bench and slowly washed him everywhere, taking breaks to rest my head on his or whisper something to him. I spent a while massaging his head as I washed his hair. I kept kissing him on the lips, forehead, neck and occasionally embracing him. Rubbed his shoulders and places I thought he'd be aching after being up and about for 2 days. There was nothing intimate about the atmosphere, it was a whole different type of intense intimacy. It's difficult to describe. He'd hardly said a word during all this and he looked like he could cry any minute. I wasn't sure what to say, I didn't want to pressure him into anything so I just looked him in the eyes, smiled and said it's okay. Once we were done we both sat there for a while on the bench under the water, not speaking, just enjoying each other's company. I kept running my hand up and down his back, across his cheek or head. Just trying to make him relax as much as possible. Once I dried him and myself off, we got into bed and I stuck the TV on. I was half watching it and half playing with his hair. I asked if he wanted to talk about anything and he shook his head. I could tell he was really upset despite him trying to hide it. Maybe 20 minutes later I could see him literally on the verge of tears. I rolled to my side and put my arms around him, pulling him into my chest. That's when he started. The tears began to flow and he sobbed and sobbed. He was squeezing me so tight sometimes it wasn't easy to breathe. I could feel the years of bottled up emotions flowing out. He continued crying harder and it broke my heart. He said something about his mum but I couldn't hear as it was muffled. Seeing the guy you love like that, clinging onto you as though you were going to leave whilst he let it all out, hurt my heart. I felt so bad for him I had some tears myself. I just held him tight and kept whispering how much I loved him, that it was okay, I'm here, I've got you, etc. Even when he eventually stopped sobbing he continued to have his arms wrapped around me so tightly with his face buried in either my stomach or chest. I continued just comforting him until he fell asleep. Usually I don't like cuddling when sleeping, but that night I held him all night long. I just couldn't bring myself to let him out of my grip. It's hard to explain the way I was feeling during this, obviously terrible that he was going through this, but at the same time I was so happy and relieved. Is that weird? It was an emotional experience, seeing the guy you love more than anything show negative emotion on that level for the first time. I remember almost every detail of the night. It's etched in my memory. I haven't brought it up to him yet. I figured maybe it's best to let him talk about the evening when he feels ready. Update 1. Despite our experience the previous night, my boyfriend didn't really show any emotion or want to be comforted in the previous weeks. I suspect he may have been slightly embarrassed about that evening. Whilst I reassured him about it, I didn't want to push the subject and make him regret doing it in the first place. Unfortunately, a few days ago his poor mom passed. I managed to see her a couple of days before and my boyfriend saw her the evening before. Once he found out he shut himself in his office for hours. I tried knocking several times but never got a response. I could hear him moving around in there so I knew he was physically okay. Late in the afternoon he eventually came out and sat down with me to watch TV. Neither of us said anything but he looked rough as can be. I placed my hand on his knee and we both just sat there watching. I was kind of panicking because I couldn't think of anything to say that would make any difference to his pain. I got him to eat something and we just sat there. A couple of hours later he said that he was going to shower. Originally I just said all right, but then maybe 5 minutes later I realized that he probably wanted me to shower with him again but didn't feel comfortable asking. I kind of kicked myself for not thinking to offer him it earlier. I guess I was so caught up in thinking about what I should say that I completely forgot that I don't actually need to say anything but can show it instead. I unclothed and joined him. It was a similar experience to the previous shower. It was a very intimate experience. Although I obviously don't enjoy the reason why we were doing it, I very much enjoyed taking care of him. Once we got out I again dried him off and I walked and tucked him into bed. We proceeded to smoke some grass whilst watching TV. He looked really upset and I was honestly surprised he hadn't cried so far. I turned out the lights and we both tried to get some sleep. I could hear him sniffling a bit so turned over and curled up against him in his arms. I didn't say anything, I just laid there with him. I fell asleep pretty quickly but my cat woke me up maybe an hour later and he was still awake. I moved up and swapped to being the one doing the holding. I rubbed his back and kissed his forehead. He just suddenly began crying. Not just the normal day-to-day tears you see from some people, these were heartbroken tears. I don't think I've actually ever witnessed anyone cry that hard in real life. It's a sound I never want to hear again. The pain he was feeling must have been insane. Again he buried his face in my chest and just cried and cried. I could literally feel him shaking. We were lying there for hours. I had my arms around him and one leg over him. He was squeezing me so tightly the whole time. He would occasionally drift off, loosening his grip on me in the process before waking up, starting to have some more tears and almost grabbing at me, pulling himself into me again. As though he was afraid he'd wake up and I wouldn't be there. It was heartbreaking. Every time I'd just squeeze him back and whisper that I'm there or something similar. I'd kiss his head and rub his back until he drifted off again. He never stayed asleep for long though. He properly fell asleep after maybe 3 or 4 hours of this drifting. And I stayed awake for maybe an hour past that just holding him. In the morning I woke up first, and when he woke he lay there for a moment before the tears started flowing again. We stayed in bed all morning just embracing each other. He's cried in my arms a couple more times since at random points of the day. Whilst I'm obviously devastated for him, I can't help but be so grateful he's willing to allow me to be there for him. Crying in daylight out of bed is a huge step from only allowing himself to do it once in a dark bedroom. I'm honestly honored that he trusts me so much. Hopefully he continues to allow me to be there for him in whatever capacity possible. Today I saw a TikTok video where a girl was mocking an ex for crying in front of her, and it enraged me. I cannot begin to imagine how these people think like this, to have someone willing to be as vulnerable as possible in front of you, to be comfortable asking for help in their darkest hour and then touring around and mocking them for it. It's disgusting.